Welcome, everyone, or welcome back. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, or welcome back if you've seen me before, or even listened to my music. My name is Set. This is Set Speaks, episode 3. Today we're going to be talking about shadow work. And before we get into any, specifics, the idea of the shadow self, which is, an internal thing. This is going to be one of those, a lot of references to the subconscious kind of episodes. But this one is very important. I think a lot of people should pay more attention to doing shadow work. So the idea of the shadow itself, like I was saying, was first conceived by Carl Jung, a 20th century psychologist from Switzerland. He defines the word shadow as a hidden part of our being. These may be parts of ourselves that we try to repress because of, they make us feel sad or wounded, or even down to societal normalities. Especially for males, we're basically taught from a very young age to just kind of sick it down, hold it there, and don't ever deal with it again because, it makes you look weak, and it makes you seem like, more feminine. I don't know. I never really got it. I've always been super in touch with my emotions, and people have always been super triggered by it. I don't really get it. Regardless, this is the side of ourselves that we do not show society. When we're at work or school, this is the side that you try to hide deep down and not let affect you. This is where we decide to create a mask for ourselves. It can also indicate how we internally perceive ourselves as being weak or in pain. This is where basically most of our negativity comes from, if not all of it. Carl Jung believed that the integration of our shadow side is key to living a balanced life, and I fully agree with that. After doing years of shadow work to deal with things from my childhood and early teenage years, which, by the way, is where most of your shadow self develops that trauma. It's just when you get to be in your 20s and 30s, you develop better coping mechanisms. If you're, more emotionally, if you're more in touch with your emotions, it makes a difference. I know people who are very old that don't. I know people who are very young that don't. It's all about emotional intelligence at the end of the day. It depends. You can live your whole life and never touch a single aspect of your shadow self, but the life that you live will be one that you end up regretting. You can do it early, like I did. I started when I was 17, 18. And you can develop good coping mechanisms. You can come into terms with yourself. You can start actually being yourself before you even, get out of college if you're going, which I don't recommend. Or, move fully into what you want to be. Hence why I'm doing what I'm doing. My favorite overall quote from his psychological notes and everything was, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will end up calling it fate." Self-deception is another form of negative energy kept within the body. It's something that you don't even necessarily see all the time unless someone tells you about it. I think that, if you go see a therapist about a traumatic experience, they're going to tell you that, you are allowed to feel this out. You are allowed to, feel this way. But no one else is really going to tell you that if they're not in a position to tell you that as well, if they're not emotionally intelligent as well. It can also be, go back to my first video about ego. If a person is super egotistical and you try to talk about your feelings with them, they're going to project that shit all over you, and you're going to look at yourself as weak. And it's going to amplify the shadow within you. It's just how that works. It can sound scary, and most of it is rather uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie to you. It really is like that. But it's super necessary to find actual joy and actual fulfillment within your life. If we don't heal from these things, they negatively affect us in many different ways. Your shadow self can run rampant. Think of it like Star Wars with the dark side. They were quite literally focused only on negative aspects of things, trying to be controlling, trying to have things be in a perfect order, and of course, people didn't want that. It's the same idea. I mean, your shadow self is the dark side in this instance. You know what I'm saying? So, obviously, like I said, full integration is what's key, but full integration is healing and coping with things that won't necessarily replicate themselves in anything other than your own perception of reality. Just because you had a job opportunity fall through doesn't mean you shouldn't try to get that job opportunity at another place. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get it. It just means that you're being redirected. It has to do with divine intervention. Most of the time, that's a blessing or a lesson or something that you are quite literally given specifically to learn how to heal from. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's just, if you manifest a shadow self that hasn't been touched in a very long time into your body and you don't do anything about it, you're going to deal with mental health problems, diseases, low self-worth, addictions, scarcity mindsets, and other actual health issues that can affect your quality of life. In the same way that stress weakens your immune system, the shadow self can cause you to do things that can weaken other parts of yourself, like physically, literally, and you can get actual sicknesses from this. It's very important that we learn to integrate our shadow selves into our actual day-to-day lives. Coming back to my point earlier, we're taught by society to hide this aspect of ourselves. At some point in our lives, we discovered that pain was a thing. We discovered what it feels like. And we started to repress it. We repress the feeling and we attempt to ignore completely the triggers so that we don't ever have to deal with those feelings ever again. Most likely, like I also said, this happens as a child or sometime growing up in the young teenage years. At that point, we begin telling ourselves the story that it's not okay for anyone to know our struggles and our battles, and that we have to be good, and that negative emotions or feelings are not right or correct. Invalidation of emotions. This should, if you've seen my first one about ego, this should all sound very familiar. This is something that you can deal with very early on, very late, or never at all. And they all have very different outcomes. As a side note, when this happens as a child or a teen, it becomes inner child healing. It becomes more difficult if you're not emotionally intelligent. It becomes more difficult if you're closed-minded and unable to see or experience or allow the healing to happen. I mean, many different things can happen from this. My point in reiterating that over and over again is that this video is very important. The fact that you've come into contact with it is very important because it might actually mean that you have things that you need to be working on, you know? It might mean that you have someone in your life that you need to help work on these things. Either way, this video found you for a specific reason, and I don't want to sound like every TikTok tarot reader, every TikTok spiritual person there is, but it really is like that. You're meant to find things, and if you're here, you're here. I encourage you to stay. So classic shadow signs, classic, signs that the shadow is beginning to take over all of you. We have uncontrollable anger, just snaps of it. Blame, laziness, insecurity, codependency, that's a big one. Codependency is a very big one. Or even being overly independent. It's crazy how there's a fine balance to everything, but being overly independent is a result of trauma. I would know this because I became overly independent as a result of trauma. It's how it is. I mean, after you deal with enough people hurting you, enough people showing you why you can't trust anyone, it becomes easier to just say, okay, I'll be by myself. And honestly, being alone can be quite addicting, to be honest. You don't have to deal with other energies, you don't have to deal with anything you don't want to, kind of, from other people at least. You don't have to deal with other emotions, anything like that. It can be addicting, but it's not how humans were made. We were made to interact. That's how it is. As one whole populace from the same two people as stated in the Bible and any other religious text, really, as extensions of God, actually. we are all meant to interact and commingle and coexist with each other. So being overly independent is detrimental not only to the society that you are supposed to be with or the community that you are supposed to be with, but it's also detrimental to your inner self, your shadow self, the side of you that's like, wait, no, but you would be happier if you were this way. If you choose not to listen to that, you're not going to be as happy as you think you are. You know, what you want isn't always what you need, which has been it's crazy because it's just been a theme of my life for, I don't know, a year or two now. Neglecting this healing, back to my point, may mean that you never actually move past what it is that you have to move past to see what life really has to offer you. Because you never know. You never actually know how much good is made for you. And I mean, if you're really good at manifesting, if you're, a very spiritual person, if you've had a lot of past lives, if manifestation is something that you're very good at, and you have a lot of inner strength, and you make things happen, if you never heal, you'll never make things happen to the full extent that you were ever made to do. I don't know, that just sounds like a waste to me. I mean, regardless, we're going to move on now to not only how you can help this, but, a few different aspects of why doing these things might help. Because there's going to be some things that you need to remain open-minded about in healing. I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're not doing it at all, there's things that you don't know about. There's a lot that you don't know about when it comes to healing. So I would ask that you remain open-minded for this next bit. Now, internal and external dialogue. If our minds and emotions become polluted, then we may not be able to think clearly. This should be pretty obvious. Our emotions may lead us astray and cause us to act out unknowingly, like I was saying, signs of the shadow self. Keeping a close watch on things that you say to yourself is unreasonably enlightening. If you actually keep track of the thoughts and the things that you say to yourself on a daily basis, I thought it flipped again. If you keep track of the things that you say to yourself on a daily basis, and you see how many of those things aren't actually constructive and they're more destructive, it might actually blow your mind. And it's the same with external dialogue, only sometimes it can actually be even more enlightening when it comes to external. Because you'll find yourself saying things that when you reflect upon them, you don't actually believe, you just want to say them. Or you've been conditioned to say them. Or in any circumstance, it's something that you say to avoid saying what you really want, specifically to fit in with people and, keep the mask up, like we were talking about earlier. Your subconscious remembers and stores everything that you say. So, by saying or thinking specific things, you are manifesting those thoughts and feelings into yourself, which is why shadow work is necessary. It helps bring balance to those thoughts. Instead of failing at something and thinking, wow, I'm so stupid, why did I do that? I should have never done that in the first place. If you think, well, this is where I messed up, this is where I could go better next time, and this is what I'm going to do about it now, the result's going to be astronomically different, and there's no argument to be had there because there's actual evidence of this. It's very simple, but it's not the easiest thing to do, and that's why everyone avoids it. That's why everyone dances around the fire instead of walking through it. As you might have heard in a lot of different songs, walking through the flame is essentially just doing shadow work and overcoming everything that you were put in front of, or that was put in front of you as a child and or teenager. In a lot of cases, it is actually both, but now, like I said earlier, this, is basically something that is meant to be either a lesson, a test, or a form of divine intervention as a form of redirection so that you can find where you're meant to actually be. And instead of seeing it as a blessing, instead of being, gracious for that, it's easier to reject it and be sad about it and show weakness to it, and then decide that weakness is something that you should suppress because it's incorrect, and then move a completely different direction. Even if it's not correct for you, it's the direction that you want to move due to the fact that you can't handle, because of past things, a circumstance that happened to you. So when you actually start working with your shadow, you have moments of awakening. you get closer to enlightenment. It's how, your spiritual path normally progresses. They lead to greater authenticity, greater creativity, and emotional freedom, which sounds nice. But it's not even the end of the list. Listen, we have a lot of other benefits here. We have improved relationships through understanding of yourself and acceptance of others. It's huge. You have increased energy and improved immune system. Talking about that earlier. Overall enhanced state of well-being and mood. Better communication with others. Ability to set boundaries in your life. Cease the cycle of self-destruction. Internal and external. Healing generational trauma and curses. We'll talk about generational curses in another video. If you already know about it, then you know. If you know, you know. And lastly, we have fully open creative conduits. Most creativity is divinely assisted. That's why rappers like to talk about, God was in the booth with me on this one. It feels like God whispered in my ear on this one. Even I say it, but I get it because it's the same way. You fully open creative conduits, you're able to create more authentically, right? You're able to create without fear of judgment. You're able to create without the fear, honestly, at all. Obviously nervousness and anxiety and all that is there, but being able to tone it down a lot and kind of, cope with it is part of shadow self-healing. It's crazy. Full circle, right? There's really only there's no negatives to this. There's none. There's perceived negatives, but not actual negatives. You might think that you're doing it wrong. You might think that you're being just overall incorrect in the way that you're doing things. You might think that, I healed this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, but it's scary because I've never done it like that before. That's a perceived negative. It's not like that. Any healing in general is good healing. Any healing that takes time is worth the effort. And that's what you have to remember the whole time, because it can actually get a lot more difficult when you have people around you who are trying to convince you otherwise. Also something I know from personal experience. So, methods of doing this. The methods of healing. So, discovering your archetype was my top because I have done research on it, a lot of research on it now, because it's going to be the next video. But discovering your archetype, as I'll discuss in the next video, can help you to figure out what methods work better for you, as well as help you to figure out what kind of person you actually are, and then work towards what you're supposed to be instead of where you're at. It actually is like setting a goal for yourself, but like mentally. It's a lot easier. It makes things easier because you can do baby steps like you would with any other goal. Journaling is another really good one. Writing down everything, writing down how you feel about specific things, how things made you feel a specific way, why they might have made you feel that way, and what you can do to fix that, right? I'm not saying keep a diary, the Dear Diary, this person called me this today, they called me ugly, and it's not like that. It's deeper than that. It's like breaking down your thoughts into words. Sometimes you'll end up saying things and you'll be like, wow, I didn't even think about it like that when I first thought about it, That's what the purpose of journaling is. Now, it can be hard for some people because everyone has different skill sets, and writing might not be in your repertoire, but that's okay. Genuinely, it is. It does not take a whole lot of effort to at least write down things at a very base level and then work through it internally, right? You can do that through meditation. Meditation leads to affirmations. Affirmations, positive affirmations. Visualization, which we can talk about in a second. Reiki or chakra healing, which, by the way, are things that I am just beginning to realize I'm very good at, beginning to study into more, and I will soon be offering a service for both. But don't expect that anytime soon. There's a lot to learn. So we have dream work too. Dream work is essentially just writing down anything from your dreams that you can remember. You might think, well, my dreams are just, subconscious little movies. They're images, they have nothing. they can tell you a lot if you actually go to professionals and go to websites and such that, are dream specialists, and they can help you break down what certain things mean symbolically. And it can help you to kind of dictate what your own brain is telling you is wrong or could be better. It's very simple. So back to visualizations. This is not going to be for everybody. I promise you. If you're not ready for this one, don't assume that you are. You have to go into this very, very ready for it, okay? This is a stoicism practice called premeditation. So premeditation is broadly visualizing and accepting the worst possibilities for any circumstance that can happen to you. When I did this, okay, I'd imagine my house being burned down, losing my family and my car, and being shamed when I seek help. I didn't really have to imagine this because it was like a reality. Obviously my house didn't burn down, but everything else seemed about on point. I know this practice is successful when I can feel centeredness within me, because you're validating your negative fantasies, essentially your destructive fantasies, if you will. It makes it a lot easier to realize how ridiculous everything really is. Even if it actually happens, you can actually find solace in realizing how ridiculous everything is, It's like, even if something really bad happens to you, if it's something that you've already visualized, then you're going to be more okay with it. The difference between visualization and manifestation is visualization is extremely purposeful in that visualization, and you don't do it all the time. It's not something that you sit with in your thoughts. Manifestation is the repeated belief that something will happen until it happens, right? It's alchemy, essentially, transmuting thoughts into physical energy. Visualization is very different from that. You can use visualization to manifest, but it's used differently, right? That's why I'm saying don't do it unless you are fully ready to do it and you know for a fact that you're ready to do it and that you can cope with it as it's happening. Because otherwise what you're going to do is create a subconscious system within yourself that thing that you visualize, that your shadow self has fed to you, is something that is still possible, right? The goal of this is to realize how ridiculous something is, right? Like you were gaslit as a child, and all of a sudden you lose a lot of your self-worth, so you end up doing things that maybe other people do, or other people say this and this, so that you can fit in with the crowd, and you don't have the opportunity to be gaslit because you're doing what everyone else is doing, and that's the right thing to do, right? So when you're doing this stoic premeditation, you would essentially be able to sit with the thought and visualize those people gaslighting you, and realize how unrealistic it is based on how you feel while you're doing the things that make you happy, right? Whether, the gaslighting is about something very serious or very small. Most gaslighting is about very small things. The intent of gaslighting is actually specifically to just nitpick on small things until it begins to eat at you, right? This is something that stoic premeditation can be very good for. In severe cases and severe trauma cases, I really just wouldn't recommend it until you've actually done all this other stuff and you're able to move past it. Journaling would be a first step for anybody, for me. Meditation would be a next one. Meditation takes time, though. Affirmations don't take time. It's just saying things to yourself, such as, I am strong, I am powerful, I'm a master manifester, I am capable of anything that I put my mind to, my journey is filled with courage. Affirmations are very powerful if you use them correctly. So meditation and affirmations go hand in hand, but affirmations are easier than meditations because, I've been meditating for 2.5 years, and I've gotten pretty far in my journey. I'm very proud of where I am in my journey, but I understand that there's a lot more to learn, right? And there's a lot more, it comes in levels. There's a lot more levels for me to climb. So with Reiki and chakra healing, this is a good thing to do after. This is an after thing. So if you do a meditation, if you do a journaling, then you would do the Reiki and chakra healing, because everything that you want to express has been expressed, right? I think that makes more sense. Coming down to the end of everything, because I didn't really want this to be a long video, but I wanted to spark the question, spark the debate, and actually give you some outlets to work better with you. Like I said, this is a user by user case, you know? Everyone's different. So finding the things that work for you is important. All I really want to do with this video, I promise, is spark the internal question within you, send you on your own path. That's what all of these videos are about, is sending you on your own path, but giving you enough information to bring up questions, right? So what's the end game here? What is the end game for shadow work? Because we've talked about it, obviously it's, being okay with being sad, not feeling weak because you have emotions, but ultimately you're releasing judgment of yourself, and you release self-destructive habits to build better self-serving habits. So as I've stated before, and I'll say it till my last breath, the two most powerful forces in the known universe, or at least our known universe, is love and gratitude, right? And the most basic form of love is self-love. From that, all other forms that resonate with your form of self-love are attracted to you. That's just how it works. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all barriers within yourself that you have built against it. My favorite quote from Rumi, if you don't know who that is, he was a poet, and also he was a mystic. A lot of people don't know that he was a mystic, but regardless, like I said, the only thing I want to do is spark the conversation. I did it with the last one. It's what I'm going to do with all of them. It's the same thing with archetypes. When I move into the next video, I'm just going to try to spark a question within you. And if you go find your archetype, it might lead you to something else. So you're welcome for taking you on the first steps of your spiritual journey. What I'm going to include in the description is a link to my favorite shadow work website. They have all the resources that you might need to begin your journey individually, as well as 10 shadow work journal prompts. I found this, there's variations of the same ones, but I basically compiled my favorites and put them into a list. I encourage you to at least try those 10, and if you can find issues that you didn't necessarily know about or think about too much beforehand, I would encourage you to begin your shadow work. It might actually lead you to everything that you ever wanted. What's wrong with that?